Of England will tend to remain cloudy this evening, with a few spots of rain moving in from the north. Mild initially, but turning much colder later on. Southeast England and the London area will also be on the cloudy side. Initially dry, but outbreaks of rain will arrive from the north. The rainy conditions will be across Wales this evening. A few heavy bursts developing as it sinks southwards. Temperatures around 10 degrees Celsius, though, this evening. It will also be cloudy and damp across the Midlands, with splashes of rain moving southwards. Temperatures around 9 or 10 degrees Celsius, but falling later as clearer air moves in from the north. Clear skies for northern England this evening once the rain has cleared, with a brisk northerly wind developing. Most places will become dry, but feeling much colder as temperatures continue to fall. Heavy showers across much of Scotland, these falling as snow over the tops of the mountains. A strong and gusty northerly wind too. The clearest weather will be towards the southeast. Showers also expected across Northern Ireland. Some could be heavy, with some hail too. Feeling much colder, with temperatures in single figures and a brisk northerly wind around the coasts. And tomorrow, the colder air continues to move south overnight tonight, with showers towards the coasts, a patchy frosty across northern areas, and that is the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Mark Dolan tonight. My Mark Meets guest is star of BBC One's Homes Under the Hammer, Martin Roberts. Should trans women be allowed to participate in female sport? We'll debate that with legendary human rights campaigner Peter Thatcher and feminist broadcaster Kelly J. Keane. Plus, we'll hear about the court verdict that's sending American lefties into a spin. And don't miss my big opinion at the start of the show. You can't comply your way out of tyranny. See you at 9.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. These are your latest headlines. Demonstrators have blocked 2 areas in London in a show of solidarity for 9 jailed Insulate Britain protesters. They're describing the so-called Highway 9 as political prisoners. Arrests have been made at Vauxhall Junction and police are diverting traffic away from Lambeth Bridge. Insulate Britain spokesperson Craig Scudder told GB News many environmental groups are now backing their campaign.
What we're experiencing today is not an Insulate Britain thing. This is, I think, going to be a show of ordinary people from a variety of different environmental groups and backgrounds just coming to push back and rebel.
Video has been released purportedly showing missing Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai having dinner with friends. The video, which can't be independently verified, was posted by a state media journalist on Twitter. It doesn't give details on when the footage was taken. The Wimbledon doubles champion disappeared nearly 3 weeks ago after accusing a former top government official of sexual assault on social media. Taxpayers could be liable for up to £335 million after a government-backed bank failed to properly scrutinise collapsed lender Greensill Capital. An MP's report found British business bank checks on the company were woefully inadequate. Former Prime Minister David Cameron was an advisor, and it's emerged that he used his position to make dozens of calls to senior government officials, including the Chancellor. He tried to secure funds during the pandemic before the lender's collapse, leading to several investigations. At least 2 people were injured when Dutch police fired warning shots during riots in Rotterdam. Water cannon were also used to disperse crowds demonstrating against tighter coronavirus restrictions. The government says it wants to introduce a law that allows businesses to restrict the COVID pass system to those who are fully vaccinated, excluding those who test negative. Meanwhile, thousands of people have been demonstrating against COVID-19 policies in the Austrian capital of Vienna. That's as the country prepares to enter a national lockdown for at least 10 days from Monday. The government says the measures are needed to contain a 4th wave of cases. The government is a step closer to extending a ban on single-use plastic items like plates, cutlery and polystyrene cups. A public consultation is being launched, while another investigation will look at how to limit other polluting products such as wet wipes, tobacco filters and sachets. England uses an estimated 1.1 billion single-use plates and 4.25 billion items of single-use cutlery each year. Only 10% is recycled. There's doubt surrounding Novak Djokovic's place at the Australian Open. That's after officials confirmed all players will have to prove they've been double jabbed to compete in the tournament. The Grand Slam champion has repeatedly refused to disclose his vaccination status. The 34-year-old Serb has suggested he won't play if the vaccine ruling is enforced. And octopuses, crabs and lobsters have feelings too, according to a new study. The research by the London School of Economics and Political Science says there's strong scientific evidence which proves the animals experience pain, distress or harm. That's your news. I'll be back at the top of the hour.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather across the UK, turning colder as a weak weather front moves south across the country. Let's take a look at the details. The southwest of England will tend to remain cloudy this evening, with a few spots of rain moving in from the north. Mild initially, but turning much colder later on. Southeast England and the London area will also be on the cloudy side. Initially dry, but outbreaks of rain will arrive from the north. The rainy conditions will be across Wales this evening, a few heavy bursts developing as it sinks southwards. Temperatures around 10 degrees Celsius, though, this evening. It will also be cloudy and damp across the Midlands, with splashes of rain moving southwards. Temperatures around 9 or 10 degrees Celsius, but falling later as clearer air moves in from the north. Clear skies for northern England this evening once the rain has cleared, with a brisk northerly wind developing. Most places will become dry, but feeling much colder as temperatures continue to fall. Heavy showers across much of Scotland, these falling as snow over the tops of the mountains. A strong and gusty northerly wind too. The clearest weather will be towards the southeast. Showers also expected across Northern Ireland. Some could be heavy, with some hail too. Feeling much colder, with temperatures in single figures and a brisk northerly wind around the coasts. And tomorrow, the colder air continues to move south overnight tonight, with showers towards the coasts, a patchy frosty across northern areas, and that is the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
The GB News pub is open, and joining me on Talking Pints, magician, illusionist and former star of Britain's Got Talent, Jamie Raven. Jamie, welcome to Talking Pints. Very good to see you. The phenomenon of the TV talent show. And I can think back to being a kid. It was Huey Green, Opportunity Knocks, and there were lots of other variants on that. And, you know, over the years, quite a lot of people, you know, singers, comedians, Jim Davidson, I think Rod Stewart and others came through and did well. I mean, lots of people came through these shows and they were the making of them. Looking at your career, Jamie, I mean, you were, you know, a magician and you were working and you were out. Because, I mean, people love magicians. You know, it's the, I don't know, the firm's Christmas lunch or whatever it is.
I think with magic in particular as well, it's the sort of thing that when you see it performed live, there's nothing to compare it to.
It's magic.
So, absolutely, yeah. So when you watch magic performed on television, and you know, not saying it never happens, but there's very rarely like cheating and editing go on that people think, because obviously when you see something that fools you, your instinct is to come up with an explanation for it. But just by the very nature that something has been on television, people might say, oh well, it's a camera trick, or they're in on it. But when you're performing live on a stage in front of 3,000 people and someone is chosen at random and they're brought up on, and then the magic happens on them, there's it's quite profound sometimes, because it's something they may have never seen before. They may never see again.
I mean, you've been doing this anyway, and you've been working hard and going out and doing it. How did you get on to Britain's Got Talent?
Yeah, so I'd been performing professionally for 13 years before I went on Britain's Got Talent, and the season I did was Series 9, and as all production shows happen, Series 1 happened, and they go out and they look for people. You have people who apply and audition, but they also go out and they ask people, would you be interested? They can't promise you anything, but if you are a magician or a comedian or someone who's been working professionally, would you like to come on and do the show? And year number one, I said, thank you very much, but no thank you. I'd just like to see what it is. I didn't know what it was. I watched it, and I didn't think that magic at that time was being particularly well received. Wind the clock forward 9 years, and an American magician called Matt Franco won America's Got Talent. And I was starting to work with some other people at the time, and just thought, well, if now's the time. And a friend of mine, Darcy, he'd reached the finals the year before that, and before that another colleague had reached the semi-final, so it was sort of moving in the right direction. I thought I'd give it a go, came second.
You were a star?
That was it, and it was...
you were a star, you were made?
It changed my life. I'd been working professionally, as I said, for 13 years before, and then that show, the final, aired in the May, and in the November I headlined a show called The Illusionist at the Shaftesbury Theatre, and that broke the box office record at the Shaftesbury Theatre. So
which must have been a great feeling.
It was incredible. As a performer, all you ever dream of is performing live on stage. To perform in a theatre in the West End at Christmas time and break a record, any record, is amazing. And if you do ever go for a pint at the Shaftesbury Theatre in the interval, stand at the tap in the middle of the bar and turn around, and my ugly mug will be looking down on you when you go there.
How stressful was Britain's Got Talent?
It was stressful in the sense that you know that you have an opportunity to change your life. So in terms of me performing and doing what I was doing, I rehearsed, till the nth degree. So I was never, stressed about myself and doing it. You just worry about how people are going to receive you, and you try your best, and you're going out then.
But you know it's potentially life-changing.
Well, 1,000,000%, isn't it? So when I auditioned for the show, I'll never experience that jump in emotion ever again. So before I did my first audition, I was just a guy who did magic tricks, and I was doing it for a living, and it was brilliant. And I had this opportunity, and I knew that if those 6 minutes went well, my life would never be the same again. And 6 minutes later, I stood there, I had a standing ovation, and Simon Cowell said, like some people believe in ghosts, I now believe in magic. And
Simon Cowell, who can be pretty acerbic at times.
Exactly.
So you'd won Simon Cowell over.
That was it. And then we got through to the semi-final and then the final, and came runner-up in the show, which was amazing. And then that opened the door to perform in the West End. And then from there, I've done 5 of my own tours. We've been to, I think, 24 different countries now. Had a range of magic sets. They came out there in Harrods and Sainsbury's. That was phenomenal.
So you've made a few quid?
I've done all right.
He's done all right.
The best thing, one of the best things happened, I went into Harrods with a friend of mine to get a picture taken of the magic sets. So I thought I'd just like a picture of my magic sets in Harrods. I thought it'd be quite surreal. So I walked up into the toy department, and I was looking around, and I just found one of the staff who was working there, and I said, oh, excuse me, and they said, I think I know what you're looking for. And then he took me to them, and I was there, it was just so surreal, to think it happened.
The thing is, Jamie, whether you're a magician, illusionist, whether you're a public speaker, as I am, and I've done, quite a lot of theatre, and even with Nigel Farage type things around the country, whether you're a comedian, all of us that are performers love a live audience.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing, you know, and there's always, before you go on stage, there's that little bit of buzz, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, and it's that, is it nerves? Well, it's wanting to do well, isn't
I
it?
think there's a big difference between nerves and excitement. I think you're nervous for something if you're scared because you are maybe unprepared or you don't know what you're doing. I think you are excited if you know exactly what you're doing and you want it to be the best that it can be.
But
and they feel the same.
But there is that feeling.
Yeah.
And then lockdown happens.
Yes.
And lots of friends of mine who are performers, I mean, it's driven them halfway around the twist.
Yeah.
They've been at home, they've hated it. Some of them have been performing in front of live audiences for decades. And they've been very, very depressed about it.
Yeah.
How did you cope with lockdown with your career?
It was, so in terms of live performing shows in front of a physical audience, obviously that was taken away. I'm a glasses half full kind of guy, and when you're
certainly are at the moment.
Yeah, well, don't just give me. I talk too much. I like the sound of my own voice.
It's all right.
I love the idea that when you're given time, and we had a lot of time, you can learn new skills and new ways of doing things, and things you're given the opportunity to evolve. So in terms of like virtual shows or like Zoom calls, for example, I don't know how many people, and certainly me, I don't know how many people had ever done a Zoom call before the lockdown came.
I mean, nobody ever heard of it, really, had they?
And that also afforded magicians and entertainers, and so, you know, we do a corporate event and it'll be on Zoom and people get dressed up and they'd be in their kitchens wearing their dinner suits and whatever. I could still perform, so we turned...
But comedians found that hard.
Yes, I think...
Very hard.
I think... So a comedian friend of mine said when he's performing, he tells a joke and he doesn't say... When he makes a joke, says the punchline, doesn't say another word until the last person in the room has stopped laughing. Because people understand things at different rates. The same thing for magic. If you do a trick and people react, let them finish and then you start again. Obviously, doing a Zoom thing, you can't hear anything. You don't know, so you have to rely on your own experience to do something, allow people time to do it. But you are performing in silence. It's very, very bizarre, and it takes a while to get used to it. But it was the best of a terrible situation. You know, you're given the opportunity to still do it and to be able to still perform to any degree or to work on new material. Obviously, like if you're a magician, I like to get people up on stage to help me with things. That can't happen on Zoom. So it gives me the opportunity to work on new material and work on new stuff. So it was, every cloud has a silver light. I know it was a terrible situation, but we were able to evolve slightly.
In a way, you're saying, as a magician, it was slightly better than being a comedian.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it was. I can only talk as a magician in the sense it gave me the opportunity to work on new material that I could do for people where they could just. I mean, it's half of what I do. I stand and talk and just perform anyway, so that stuff's fine. But in terms of interacting with an audience, rather than having someone on stage and all the opportunities that arise with that, you're now interacting just through a screen, so they can't choose a card. No. I can't borrow a ring or a coin or whatever, but I can come up with other ways of maybe doing tricks that everybody performs interactively while they're watching, they're playing along with at home. So yeah, I think it would have been. It's difficult for everyone, and I can only say, like, as myself,
Yeah, and the other problem that performers have, you know, whether you want to make people laugh or make people think, you want to entertain people, is so many things that were considered to be acceptable 30 years ago are now by often a very loud minority, considered to be unacceptable, cancelled. Has that hit the world of being a magician?
I don't know. I'd say personally, no, I don't think it has. I think, obviously, you can, whenever you're touching on any sort of subject, you know, it is always possible.
I mean, is sawing people in half allowed anymore? Or?
It is, yeah. As long as you put them back together again, you know, if you don't, you can have a lawsuit on your hands, which we don't want, especially this day and age. But I think with magic, we're sort of given an easier time than comedians, because with comedians, and it's my favourite art to watch perform. You have somebody, a lady or a gentleman, or anybody just standing there with their words. They just have their words. So I want to make people laugh while I do my tricks. They're sort of the glue that holds it all together. If you don't laugh, not a problem. You might still like the tricks. If you don't like the tricks, you might like the jokes. So I've sort of got a safety blanket behind it. It's awesome. With the visual art that magic is, when you're watching on Zoom or watching on television, it's a visual thing. Sometimes you don't need language. We can perform abroad and do the same act. Even talking in English, people can still see it. They can still understand what's happening. So I think as magicians, we're a bit luckier in that sense that we have the visual side of it sometimes.
Who's the best you've seen?
Magician? Yeah. Technically, I'd say probably David Copperfield in America. The reason being is that, you know, there's a saying, jack of all trades, king of none. He's king of everything, so he can perform close-up, he can perform the big illusions, he can do the funny stuff, he can do... And he's, you know, there's a reason why he's a billionaire and basically no other magician ever has been. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, he's absolutely phenomenal. And what about your charity work? Just tell us briefly about
so
that. I know it's close to your heart.
I'm immensely proud, so I'm a patron of a number of charities. They're all for children. So by and large, most of them are usually performing for children who are poorly in hospitals, and that's been amazing. That was obviously sadly taken away. But again, that led us to another avenue of doing things online and virtually and posting magic classes for them and doing shows for them as well, which is brilliant. So yeah, it's, if you're ever in a fortunate position where you can give a little back, I just think...
Oh, well, good for you. Well, it's really interesting. I mean, I have to say, I'm fascinated by the whole question of these talent shows, changing people's lives. It did with you. Now, Jamie Raven, there's no such thing as a free pint here at GB News, so show us a trick.
I'd love to. I know, talking of talent shows, lovely little segue there. I thought I'd show you one of the tricks I did on my audition for Britain's Got Talent. A friend of mine, a very talented artist, drew these for me. These are Bank of Britain's Got Talent banknotes. Have a look. Yep. You will recognise the characters of the judges.
See Simon Cowell, the man. Yeah.
Bank of Britain's Got Talent £50 notes. Obviously, finish the show now. We need to change this back into English sterling, so I'm going to use you to help me, Nigel. I need two things from you. If you don't mind, if I could borrow your index finger, if you don't mind, if that would be OK, and you could just point your finger for me, index, and I need a magic word. It can be anything in the world except abracadabra. Everyone cops out with abracadabra. What would you like?
Right, well, hey presto.
OK, on three, don't move. 1, 2, hey presto. There is £250.
Oh, I tell you what.
In English sterling, which we're going to use to go to the pub now.
Can I employ you?
It'd be my pleasure.
No wonder we got... Brilliant. I haven't got a clue how you did that. And if I was to really think about how you did that, I'd probably get quite frustrated, which is probably why Sir Richard Branson once said, throw him off the blooming plane. Yeah. You must have driven him mad with it.
Didn't say blooming, but yeah.
No, I know. I was just... But we are before the watershed here.
Yeah.
Jamie Raven, fascinating, and thank you for joining us here on Talking Pints.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
For the first time on Talking Pints, I will not be having a pint of beer. This is not because I've signed the pledge or anything like that. It's because our guest has impeccable taste and he wanted to drink English sparkling wine. And given that I come from the county of Kent, which is producing magnificent sparkling wines, as good as, or if not even better than champagne, I've decided that given his magnificent choice, I'm going to join him tonight with an English sparkling wine. Trevor Kavanagh, welcome to Talking Pints.
Cheers, Nigel.
Well chosen, you.
British bubbly at its best.
Just terrific. Lots of things about you. You've had a very long career in journalism, but let's start with today. I have been banging on, as it were, about the Channel migrant crisis. I started off in March 2020. I felt that government weakness, they may as well put a sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying all welcome. I've been predicting all the way through that the numbers would rise and rise and rise, and 1,185 last Thursday. My guess is tomorrow will be huge, again, given the sea conditions. And I was, last week on the show, twice, I actually, in front of the camera, held up the daily newspapers, talked about the other broadcasters, and said, nobody is talking about this. Despite the fact there was 500 came one day, nothing in the newspapers. 695 came the next day, almost nothing in the newspapers. You today have written a very, very strong piece about this, because you feel, as I do, that actually Boris is in trouble on this, isn't he?
I think he's in increasing trouble. He's been in trouble because of sleaze, obviously, over the last week or so. But I think that will pass. I think that other events will overtake it, and one of the events that I predicted would overtake it is immigration. And it's been simmering away in the background for as long as you and I have been covering or acting in politics. And it has been noticed, by the way, that you've been leading this campaign.
Well,
so your enormous credit.
Because it matters to people.
Of course it does. It's the biggest single thing, I think. Once you strip away people's day-to-day worries about cost of living, the possibility of being stabbed in the street or their kids getting involved in drugs or something, the thing that worries them most of all, and has done for the last 20 years, has been uncontrolled mass immigration. And we don't know exactly how many illegal immigrants have entered this country in the last 20 years, but Migration Watch won't put a figure on it even, but their private view is that it's probably around 4 million, either legal or illegal. But we certainly think that at least 1 million, probably much more than 1 million, have come in illegally. And I think that's intolerable by any standards of fairness, even on the basis of legal immigration. People who are queuing in orderly fashion in other countries to come here.
No, I think Boris is in very big trouble on this. And you're right, sleaze comes and goes and it doesn't help. But I think he's in very, very big trouble on this. But why, Trevor? You've been involved in current affairs and politics and media much longer than me. Why is there this reluctance to cover the subject? Why does it have to reach a real boiling point before anybody even wants to talk about it?
And even now, Nigel, I don't think people really want to talk about it. Not in politics, not in the frontline politics. The public, yes. But you know as well as anybody what it's like when the moment you start mentioning immigration, you are immediately branded a racist or a fascist. And that has been the plight that both of us have had to suffer since Tony Blair took the decision in early 2000s to open the door to all of the accession states. But at the same time, we were opening the door to all sorts of other refugees. And I said to him once, have you noticed that the face of Britain is changing? And he looked at me as if I just crawled out from under a rock. And after the conversation, one of his SPADs said to a colleague of mine, he's a fascist, isn't he? And that is how they shut the debate down.
That's right. That's right. Racist, extremist, all the rest of it. Yeah, they're still very, very reluctant to cover it. Now, before we get on to your long, fascinating journalistic career and the big, big characters that you work with, well, the biggest in the business, just share with the audience what made you become a £10 pom and head off to Australia.
Well, I suppose I'm an immigrant, or an immigrant.
Well, you were an early Brexiteer. You Brexited Britain, didn't you?
Well, I was an export reject because I came back. Well, I mean, the great thing about the £10 pom era, I went out when I was 22, and for £10, you were on the other side of the world. And I thought, well, look, I've got to stay for at least 2 years to qualify. And from there, I can travel back, if I want to, via any part of the world. I can come back through Asia or through America. As it turned out, I stayed for the next 4 years, got married and came home after that. I mean, Australia was the most fantastic experience for me in the 1960s and 70s when all sorts of doors were open to an ordinary journalist, whereas you'd have Buggins turn in this country, to some extent, less in journalism than in other careers. But in Australia, everybody I came across in their 30s was the heads of sort of the whole Pacific Basin or something for whatever they did. People were rising up to become editors or deputy editors or specialists because there were vacancies and there were opportunities.
And Britain was a bit stuffy by comparison.
Britain was very stuffy back then. I mean, things have changed a lot, and you can make rapid progress these days. But the great thing about Australia was it was a real, genuine egalitarian society where if you did the job properly, you got promotion. And they threw me into the sort of deep end as a political editor in Canberra of the paper I was on, which is now the now defunct Sydney Daily Mirror. And it was just 6 months before Gough Whitlam was sacked.
Yeah.
Huge, immense stories. I mean, you couldn't...
Because this was where the Queen, of course, got involved, didn't
The Governor-General sacked him,
Interesting, interesting. But you came back, and it was with an Australian, of course.
Yes.
That you have made a very big name in journalism. You've probably been the most influential journalist in the last 40 years because you became political editor of The Sun in '83. You were there through some very dramatic moments, the Thatcher years, the battle with the miners' unions and Scargill, ERM, which we'll come back to in a moment, Major, and of course, in a way, you were partly responsible for Kinnock not winning that election, weren't you?
Oh, I wouldn't possibly. I mean,
well, the Sun newspaper. Well, the Sun newspaper was, and you had.
Well, the Sun is the thing. I mean, the Sun has been one of the most potent forces in British politics and in British society, in a way that is almost impossible to imagine happening as it did in the 1960s and 70s, and then through the 80s.
Because there was no internet.
No internet. Everyone turned to the Sun as the breaker of big stories. We were the first to break the stories, and other newspapers used to. And I remember the editor of the Times, Peter Stoddart, paying us the ultimate tribute and picking up the latest splash, Sun splash as it came off the presses, and they're sitting there having their evening conference and saying, if that's in the Sun under that byline, we can just lift it. I mean, that was amazing. This is a super soaraway Sun you were talking about.
It was, I mean, politically very, very powerful. And we had Kelvin Mackenzie on a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, a highly controversial character, but
Brilliant.
clearly very, very good as an editor.
Yeah.
What about Rupert? I mean, how close to Rupert Murdoch have you been over the years?
Well, by the very nature of things, you don't do politics for his favourite newspaper without him wanting to talk to you now and again.
And he, of course, a newspaper man at heart.
He's a Sun man at heart.
Yeah.
Not just a newspaper man. I think the Sun is his baby. I think that even today, he is more interested in the Sun as a newspaper than possibly any other part of his business. Obviously, there are things like Fox TV and so on,
which is enormous.
Very important.
Yeah.
But the thing that he loves, the first love of his life, was the Sun 45 years ago, or whenever it was, and it's been. After all, it was the font of his fortune. It was the fortune that it made allowed him to build Sky and then go to America and build his American business over there. It all came from the Sun.
Yeah. No, I mean, his career is astonishing in terms of what he's achieved and I mean, the influence that he's had. Kelvin, working with Kelvin, come on, be honest, what was that like?
It was a combination of terrifying and exhilarating and also very temporary. Because my wife and I used to make plans for what we would do in 3 months' time when I got the sack. Which I did once. I got the sack, as everyone got the sack.
What did you do to get the sack?
Nothing.
Because he sat in that chair a couple of months ago, and I said to him, in a sort of slightly accusatory term, I said, Kelvin, you were a tyrant when you were on the Sun, and I wondered what his reaction. He said, "Yes, I was, and I loved it."
I said that to him, and he took it as a compliment.
Yeah.
And I said, "You were." No, I won't say the word I actually used because. But he knows very well that he was a very tough boss who often went over the top in more ways than one. But at the same time, there's a sort of unerring way of getting the readers on side and building upon everything that went before. And we very nearly got to the point of the 5 million a day circulation under his editorship.
Which today seems almost beyond comprehension.
It certainly does, doesn't it?
When you talked about Australia and that sort of meritocratic society where people could climb the ladder very quickly regardless of age or class or all of those things, in a sense, was that what attracted you to Mrs. Thatcher?
Well, in a sense it was, because I watched a Labour government fall apart because of typical Labour Party policies on spending and borrowing and the way the economy crumbled. I came back to Britain in 1978 during the winter of discontent, just as it was beginning. I mean, in those days, people don't remember and probably cannot imagine what it was like to find themselves. And in those days, they had proper winters. They had a foot of snow that you had to trudge through.
Well, this is before global warming, is it?
Oh, Lord, before the new ice age. So you really did have to battle to get on a bus because it was overcrowded, because there's only one bus going. There's a strike in every direction, the post office workers and so on. And then Thatcher came in, and you had to... The machine that she brought in, some of the cabinet ministers she had, were really first rate. They were tough. They'd worked out their policies before winning the election, and they put them into effect. Nigel Lawson, I think, although he came a cropper in the end, was a brilliant chancellor or treasury man at the beginning. Geoffrey Howe, to his credit, was an enormous success dealing with inflation and tax reform.
Painful medicine, there wasn't.
Painful medicine, yes. I mean, inflation shot up to, what was it, 26%?
27%, I think it was, yeah.
26.5, I think. Anyway, whatever it was, I can remember going into supermarkets and the shop assistants would be running around with a little sticker tape, putting new prices on over the top of 3 or 4 other new prices as the prices rose day by day. I mean, that was terrifying. And, you know, mortgages just went through the roof. You couldn't get a mortgage, in fact, when we first arrived back in England.
And no, I mean, listen, it was very tough medicine. She was very unpopular in some quarters, but the economic policies did work. And I was part of that as well. I was a member of the Conservative Party, and I believed in it. I thought it had to be done. But you mentioned the fact that you came back to a Labour government that was high spend, high tax. And I put it to you, we have a Conservative government that is high spend, high tax, state control at every level. This is not a Conservative Party, is it?
Well, I think that an awful lot of the present cabinet would echo those views, and in private they do. I mean, they literally hold their hands up and talk about the money that's being hurled at the NHS and at COVID, and also the taxes, the national insurance contributions going up. Everything's going to go up next year in a way that we cannot imagine, because we haven't been through it for the last 20 or 40 years.
It's really 40 years, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Inflation is now... I know that the Treasury, the Chancellor, is very worried about inflation. I know that the banks are very worried. The Bank of England itself is not actually doing its duty either on this. And once inflation gets out of control, it's very difficult, as we know, to get it back into control. And I think it's going to go way beyond the 6% they're talking about. I think it's going to be 8, 9, maybe even double figures.
I do. Inflation is a disease of money caused by government, is what Enoch Powell told me 30 years ago. And, I think all the evidence is he's right. Is Boris going to survive? On the face of it, big majority, I mean, it should be easy.
10 days ago, I would have said yes. I would have said that he was comfortably ahead in the polls. He hadn't been behind in the polls. He had delivered Brexit. He had got the vaccination programme going. And I would have thought he was unassailable, at least by the Labour Party as it was then. It was only 10 days ago. Yeah. And I think that he blew all that in one...
A long time.
It is. 10 days is... So I think he blew all of that in one stupid move.
Yeah.
And I don't know what on earth possessed him, but it was his move.
Because if Patterson had taken his medicine, he'd have been back in the Commons before Christmas. It would have been just yet another MP.
We wouldn't have known.
Knuckles. And lots of Tories, the posh Tories, sitting on 20,000 majorities with their big second incomes, could have carried on having their second incomes, which now look threatened. And the 2019 intake, who were very different people, more Thatcherite, really, former coal miners and aspirational people without the same very posh backgrounds. They're now worried that sleaze could make them lose their seats. He seems to have really upset both sides of the parliamentary party.
He has, and a new development has taken place in the divisions It's not just Remainers versus Brexiteers now. It is those red wall seat Tory MPs versus the old guard.
The Toffs versus the Oiks.
The Toffs, yes, or the Spartans, as they call them.
I like the Oiks because, to me, the Oiks are the youkification of the Conservative Party, and in a way they are.
Well, they're your boys, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Girls.
Yeah, absolutely. Brexit, Trevor, you were always very, very strongly Eurosceptic. And I just want to finish on this point. I don't think the public really understand what an important role Rupert Murdoch played, and you played, back in 1997, without which I believe we would have joined the euro, which would have been economically catastrophic and would have made Brexit very, very much harder to achieve. Just explain what happened with, I mean, you know, your newspaper had fallen out of love with John Major, and I get all the reasons why. Blair was off to the races. Just explain, just tell us, for historical record, what happened with Blair, the euro, the referendum pledge.
Well, it's very simple. He would have gone for the single currency without a referendum, and he was very powerful at that particular point. At that point, he'd been victorious in Iraq, and he could easily have carried that without anyone against it at all. Even Gordon Brown couldn't have stood in his way if he decided. And as I understand it, he was told by Rupert that were he to go down that route without a referendum, then we would have to campaign against it. And at that point, as you say, the Sun was a potent force.
And you'd hurt the Labour Party in the previous election.
Yes, and I think that gave Blair pause for thought. And he promised a referendum, and from then on, the referendum was inevitable. And it, thanks to you, actually took place.
Well, and finally, Trevor, what's the high point of it all been?
Just doing the job, frankly. I mean, I'm absolutely stunned that it's now been 40-odd years since I started working for The Sun and for Rupert Murdoch, and I've had the most exhilarating career you could possibly have, even possibly more exhilarating than yours.
Well, you see, someone like Trevor Kavanagh, he's an old journo, he's an old hat, he's never going to retire. He still writes a column in The Sun every Monday, and it's the first thing I turn to every Monday. That was Trevor Kavanagh, who joined me on Talking Pints.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Kerry, really interesting. I mean, there you were in Atomic Kit and in a position of incredible fame.
Yeah.
I mean, really incredible fame. and success and money. You had a very tough start in life. How do you go from a tough start to being in a video like that and being a star?
In the right place at the right time, Nigel. I was in a nightclub. And got approached. For me, it was unbelievable. It was everything I ever wanted to become famous. And for me, when I say becoming famous, I wanted to be loved. That's what I wanted more than anything. I think everybody wants to be loved, but I was so desperate to be loved. So when I became a celebrity and I'm on the stage, it was great. I loved it. I still do now. I still love performing in the shower.
So getting into this group, it just happened.
It just happened overnight. Yeah. So I was in a nightclub, right place at right time. This guy said to me, I know this guy called Andy McCluskey from All Cash on My News in the Dark. I went along, took my page 3 photographs, told a few jokes, sang a few songs, and they based a band around my personality, and I was a founder member.
Now, page 3, you just mentioned it.
Yeah.
Page
was
3.
you a fan, Nigel?
Oh, big time. But we're not supposed to say that anymore.
I don't see why not.
I mean, page 3, it's all stopped. It's all been banned. It's all seemed to be awful. It's all seemed to be demeaning to women. How do you respond to that?
Well, I do OnlyFans, Nigel, which is an over-18 site as well, and that's how I've become a millionaire again. For me, at school, I'm not going to lie, I had a great chest on me. I wasn't going to be a rocket scientist. Can't believe I'm having this conversation with Nigel Farage on national television. But I had a great rack on me, and I wasn't going to become a rocket scientist. But I knew in my head to get out of this council estate and become what I wanted to. That was my get out. I was a pretty girl.
Was doing page 3, was it demeaning?
No, not at all.
Was it exploitative?
No, I loved it. I enjoyed it. I felt empowered. This is my body, Nigel. I'll do with it what I want. And for me, I didn't have the brains to be a politician or a doctor, but I had the body and I had the brains to know to use that body to a certain extent to get what I wanted. And that was the money and the success and the foundation for my children. My children go to have private education. All of my kids have had private education. I live in a beautiful £2 million house. I've done that. I've created it. And because I've created this little empire, for me now, I've been able to invest in myself with my dating app and my clothing brand and my fitness brand.
But before you got to where you are now, so you had this amazing app and, you know, Atomic Kitten was a mega success and people love it. You make quite a bit of money out of it. You get married, of course, to another big pop star.
Yeah, Brian McFadden.
So, kind of, you've gone from where you were to just this most incredible...
So I got a blessing from the Pope when I married Brian. Load of good that did like. But honest to God, I've gone from this kid in foster home to, you know, inviting Mariah Carey to my wedding, to getting a blessing from John Paul the Pope himself.
That's amazing.
You know, and I think that goes to show you can achieve and do anything that you want to, that you set your mind to.
You believe in yourself.
100%. I'm a massive believer in law of attraction, manifestation, affirmations, gratitudes. I'm a massive believer in all that. I've been on every side of the coin you can think of, but I've brought it all back.
Because then you went into the jungle.
I did go in the jungle.
And you became the queen of the jungle.
I did. You know what? That for me was, I think, still today, the highlight of my career.
Was it?
To have that amount of love, I keep going back to love again, and being put on that pedestal, which the press do, Nigel, which you know it does.
Well, they put you up,
they
but then
put you up there,
we'll come to that in a moment.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
So, wasn't it humiliating doing bush trucker trials and all this kind of stuff?
Oh, God, no. It was great. For me, I get offered to do these reality shows, and for me, Nigel, I think, wow, what a great opportunity. I would never normally go and do something like that as a normal person. You wouldn't, unless it's offered to you. I've got amazing memories. I've done great adventures. I've done things that I never thought I'd do in a lifetime, and I'm being paid to do it at the same time.
So it was all going. Kind of, you know, we get into sort of 2004, 5, 6, and kind of life can't get much better. Mm-hmm. But then it all goes wrong, Kerry.
Yeah, it does.
It
all went wrong, didn't it?
Was it too much success too quickly?
No, I think when my first husband left me, for me, that was straight back down to earth. So before I met Brian, I was in Atomic Kitten. I lived like in a council estate. I was doing drugs with my mother. Mm-hmm. And Brian was like this knight in shining armour, took me away, moved me to Ireland, sorted my life out. He left me straight back to where I love my mum to bits, by the way. She's sound now. but straight back to where I started. So rather than grieving my marriage failure, not only did I feel a failure as a wife, I felt a failure as a mother as well. And my go-to was cocaine, unfortunately, and that became my best friend, Nigel.
And then the press who
they had a field day.
And you were...
When the News Up World was around, they had a field day with me,
you
they
were
did.
plastered, weren't you? All over the Murdoch
Everywhere,
newspapers.
yeah.
And it was relentless.
Yeah, it made me feel suicidal. It really was.
Did it?
Was, yeah, there was like 40 paps outside my house every single day. I know that Saturday phone call when you got,
I know it. I've been through it, yeah.
And you'd be scared, and my phone even to this day is always on silent. I hate phone calls. I always think it's going to be bad news. You know, if my manager rings, I think, oh my God, what is it? I get really scared. It was to a point, it was suicidal. That, you know, I couldn't trust everybody. Everyone was telling stories, and then obviously there was, you know, the hacking thing, and it was like I didn't know who to trust, and cocaine became my confidant. It gave me confidence when I needed it. It was there when nobody else was, and it just turned out to be a liar, really, like most men, Nigel. I nearly died doing that, but I had to turn it all around.
Drugs are everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere from the big city to a little village in rural England.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you say to your kids about these drugs?
Well, I think my kids wasn't aware that I was doing drugs. My Molly and Lily, I think Molly was 9 and Lily was 8, and I sat them down and I did a documentary called Kerry Katona Coming Clean. And there was in this big private school, and I wanted them to see the documentary themselves. And they were dead shocked. They was like, when did all this happen? For me, I'd like to think that my kids know what I've been through. I'm very open and honest. Even in front of my 7-year-old, if someone asks me about addiction, I will speak about it. It's completely open. I want my children to know every side of it that you can think of. You know, so I like to think that they wouldn't do it because they've seen what I've gone through myself.
You said earlier on in this interview that the feeling that cocaine was your friend, that it was there when nobody else was there, but that it was all a lie.
Mm. Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a lie. It's called the devil's dandruff. It's the most evil thing in the world, even more so than Mark Croft. It is very, very evil. And for me, it's something I know that I'll never, ever go back and do, ever in a million years. I've worked too hard to get to where I am today.
Yeah. And what do we do with young people? Is the messaging right in schools or...?
No, it isn't. And another thing that's not even good in schools as well, which really gets to me, like the bankruptcy and the drugs, it's not spoke about. You go to school, Nigel, and you learn about the Battle of Hastings, right? What's that going to do for somebody when they leave school? No one teaches you about a mortgage. I want you to tell me why it's not in the education. No one teaches you about mortgage, don't teach you about bankruptcy, unless you do a business course.
Yep.
And not everybody does that, and it's only briefly spoke about then. You don't teach about your VAT or your tax or life insurance or a will or a mortgage.
So you're not being prepared for life?
You're not, and they're the most important things. You have to, you know, the whole dream is, you know, getting married, having kids, getting a mortgage, getting your life. No one teaches you any of that.
I love it. You're right.
Like your credit card, no one teaches you about anything.
Just getting people to pass exams is not education.
Well, I don't think so. It's about life skills.
I'm with you.
No one teaches, and even today, like, when my children leave school, they're not going to have a clue how to get a mortgage. No one teaches that kind of stuff. Or about drugs and mental health. It's not taught enough. 1 in 4 people suffer. I've got bipolar. 1 in 4 people suffer with a mental health. No one teaches it in school properly. I think it's wrong. Come on, Nigel, you can sort this out.
You ever thought about politics?
Me for MP.
But you're really passionate there about the way we should be bringing teenagers
100%. I think we go on about life, and the reason why so many people make these mistakes with drugs is due, a lot of it, to mental health, and it's not spoken about enough in the schools at all. Addiction, bipolar, things like domestic abuse. This is real life stuff that you're taught that happens to people when they grow up, you know, and none of that is taught, and I think it's wrong.
No,
what can you do about it, Nigel?
Well,
Help me out here, love.
Look, I'm with you. I think the education system, we're letting our kids down in this country terribly.
Hugely.
At school, I think we're sending too many kids to university who get degrees that don't help them.
And they don't even do anything with it.
Well, they could be learning trades and skills and things they're proud of for
100%.
themselves. So, no, I'm absolutely with you on that. After all these disasters, you then decide that the Big Dipper of the Katona life, you see, which is after some pretty big highs, and you've hit the lows here, but you've given up the horrible white powder stuff,
Yeah.
and you've decided you're going to fight your way back. I've got to ask you about OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Which?
Do you want a free subscription, Nigel? Come on, I don't mind. Friends discount and all.
I've got to ask you about OnlyFans. I'm ignoring that, by the way. I've got to ask you about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is exploitative, isn't it?
Well, it depends on what you do on there. I mean, what is the difference than me? I go topless every year on holiday because I don't want tan marks, because I do photo shoots. Look at the photo shoots back in the day. You had Zoo magazine, you had FHM, you had Nuts. You know, there's nothing that I've not done in those magazines that I'm not doing on OnlyFans.
Okay.
And I go topless every year on holiday with my children, just because I'm lying there like that and my nipples are under my armpits. But when I'm doing OnlyFans and I'm stood like that, yeah, I'm making the money. Yet when I'm on a beach with the kids, the paps are getting pictures and making the money.
Because
Why
there are
shouldn't
lots
I be
of...
making the money?
No, fine. Kerry, if you're doing it and you're in control of it and you're in charge of it, and that's fine. But there has been a lot of criticism of that site, hasn't there?
I don't know. I think it's an over-18 site, you know. It's for an over-18s people. I don't understand what the criticism is. It's not just... topless and that kind of thing. You can go on there and do a makeup tutorial or a cooking lesson.
The criticism is that it is de facto a sort of pornographic site.
Yeah. Well, it can be. It depends on what you're signing up for. By all means, a lot of stuff I do is very sexy. I do topless modelling on there. That's as far as I go, because I do have to... My Molly, who sat out there, she took pictures of me. There's no difference she's going to be mortified now. Me walking out on a beach, at a bar, in the sun, in the Bahamas, having a pint, topless, enjoying the sun, and then a pap gets a picture. Yeah. So I can't... I do it, I take control, get my kids a private education with it so they can go learn about the Battle of Hastings and get no real-life education.
Yeah. Ancient Greek. Boris Johnson's got all that stuff, ancient Greek and all the rest
I
of
don't
it.
get
You
it,
never know.
I don't understand it.
And Kerry, you're also involved with Thrills, aren't
Yes, I am.
Tell us about that.
So I'm the creative advisor of Thrills. So Thrills is like a personal message to your fans. You know, we all used to autographs back in the day, but now because of social media and things like that, so a fan can get in touch, ask for a personal video, happy birthday, congratulations on your wedding, from whichever fan they want, whether it's myself or, I don't know, yourself, if you ever wanted to do something like that, Nigel. And I think it's amazing to give that person. For me, Nigel, I love nothing more than making people smile.
You're good at it.
I am. See? There you go. And I did that one for free for you. For me, it's about making people happy. You've got one life, haven't you? And that's what Thrills is all about. And you can do corporate things as well, like do a video about mental health or cheer somebody up. We've had this awful pandemic and I've loved nothing more than sending personal videos of happy birthday, congratulations, singing a bit of Whole Again and knowing
making money.
I'm making money. At the end of the day, I'm going to make money every way I can. I've got an orphanage at home, me, Nigel. I've got to feed my kids.
So you're back on top.
Yeah.
Life's great.
Yeah.
No more disasters.
Well,
no
I
more
can't
falls.
say that because I'm only human at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? Life's life. You don't know what's around the corner. It's how you deal with it. That's the difference.
That was Kerry Katona, finishing her Talking Pints piece with some real philosophy.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Ahead to this evening's weather across the UK, turning colder as a weak weather front moves